Commander Vexthera stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars bend around them as they traveled through hyperspace. His massive claws clicked against the metal railing as he studied the holographic display floating before him. 12 feet tall, with dark scales covering his body like natural armor, he was the perfect example of Zephrian evolution. His yellow eyes could see in complete darkness. His reflexes were faster than any machine, and his claws could cut through steel like paper. For 3,000 years, the Zephrian Empire had ruled the galaxy. They were the ultimate hunters, the apex predators that every other species feared. Vexthera had personally conquered 47 worlds. Not once had he encountered a species that could match his people in combat. The Zephrians were simply superior to every other life form in the galaxy. Commander, called Subcommander, Vectar from across the bridge. We are approaching the target system. Initial scans are complete. Vexthera turned his massive head toward his subordinate. Vectar was young for a Zephrian, only 200 years old, but he was eager to prove himself in battle. His smaller frame still towered over what most species would consider large. His claws were already sharpened for the hunt to come. "Show me the data," Vexthera commanded, his voice a deep growl that vibrated through the ship's hull. The holographic display changed to show a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. The world looked peaceful, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. Vexthera had seen thousands of worlds like this one, all of them filled with weak creatures that fell easily to Zephrian might. "The planet is called Earth," Vectar reported. "Population, approximately 8 billion. The dominant species calls themselves humans. They appear to be bipedal mammals, averaging 6 feet in height." Vexthera let out a sound that might have been laughter if it had come from any other species. From a Zephrian, it was more like the rumbling of an earthquake. 6 feet? How pathetic! What weapons do they possess? Vectar manipulated the display to show images of humans. Vexthera stared at the creatures in disbelief. They were small, pink, and completely defenseless. No claws, no fangs, no natural armor, no enhanced senses. They looked like prey animals, the kind of creatures that existed only to feed stronger species. "They have developed some primitive technology," Vectar continued. "Simple projectile weapons, basic spacecraft, rudimentary energy systems. Nothing that could threaten even our oldest ships." Vexthera studied the images more closely. The humans wore coverings over their soft skin, which proved how weak they were. A proper predator needed no protection except what nature provided. He watched footage of human soldiers carrying their primitive weapons, moving slowly and clumsily compared to the fluid grace of a Zephrian warrior. "Have they encountered other galactic species?" Vexthera asked. "No, Commander. They appear to be completely isolated. Our intelligence suggests they have never seen aliens before. They will be easy prey." Vexthera nodded, satisfied. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. The humans had no idea what was coming for them. They'd never faced true predators like the Zephrians. They would probably surrender after the first demonstration of Zephrian power. The bridge crew continued their preparations as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Earth's system. Vexthera watched his ship spread out in attack formation. 50 vessels, each one capable of destroying an entire city. The humans would see this fleet and understand that resistance was hopeless. Commander reported his communications officer, "We are receiving transmissions from the planet. They appear to be attempting to make contact." "Ignore them," Vexthera ordered. "Begin the demonstration. Target their largest population center and destroy one of their primitive structures. Something large enough that they will understand our power, but small enough that we do not waste too many potential slaves." The fleet moved toward Earth with the confidence of apex predators approaching defenseless prey. Vexthera had done this countless times before with countless other species. First came the demonstration of power, then came the surrender. Then came the harvest of slaves and resources. It was a pattern that had worked for 3 millennia, as Earth grew larger on the view screen. Vexthera felt the familiar excitement of the hunt. His claws extended slightly, an unconscious response to the anticipation of battle. But he doubted there would be much of a battle. The humans looked so weak, so helpless. They probably could not even run very fast, The first human transmission reached his ship. A female human appeared on the communication screen, speaking in their primitive language. The translation system quickly decoded her words. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. We wish to establish peaceful contact with your civilization. Vexetta snorted with amusement. The human female looked even more pathetic than the males. She was small, with no visible weapons or armor, and she spoke of peace like weakness was something to be proud of. Her voice held no threat, no warning of the consequences of attacking her people. She sounded like prey trying to negotiate with a predator. "Shall I respond, Commander?" asked his communications officer. "No, let them wonder. Fear makes the hunt more interesting." Vexera watched as human ships began to appear on his sensors. Tiny craft that looked like metal insects compared to his massive warships. The humans were actually trying to form a defensive line, as if their primitive vessels could somehow stop a Zephrian fleet. The largest human ship moved forward, broadcasting on all frequencies. The same female appeared on screen again, but this time her voice was firmer. "Unknown vessels, you are entering Earth space without permission. We are prepared to defend our world. Please withdraw or face the consequences." This time, Vexera did laugh, a sound that made several bridge crew members step back in respect. The human was threatening him, a 6-foot-tall creature with no natural weapons was threatening a 12-foot-tall apex predator with claws that could tear through steel. "Consequences," he repeated, savoring the word. "Yes, there will be consequences, but not for us." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their flagship. Destroy it completely. Let them see what happens when prey tries to threaten predators." Weapons officer hesitated for a moment. "Commander, our intelligence suggests they have never encountered alien technology. Perhaps we should attempt to capture some specimens first." Vexthera's eyes flashed with annoyance. "We will have plenty of specimens after they surrender. Right now, they need to learn their place in the natural order. Fire." The flagship's main weapon charged with a sound like thunder. Energy gathered in the massive cannon, enough power to vaporize an entire city. The human ships continued their pathetic defensive formation, apparently not understanding the level of destruction about to be unleashed upon them. But as Vexthera watched the target lock engage, he noticed something strange. The human ships were not running. They were not begging for mercy. They were holding their position, preparing to fight against impossible odds. For just a moment, Vexthera felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. Why? Were the humans not acting like prey? Every other species had understood their hopeless situation immediately. They had either surrendered or fled. But these humans were standing their ground against opponents who were clearly superior in every way. The moment passed quickly. Prey animals sometimes fought when cornered, even knowing they could not win. It was simply instinct, though humans would learn soon enough. "Fire," he commanded again, and his flagship's main weapon discharged toward the human fleet. The Zephrian energy beam struck Admiral Kate Sullivan's flagship dead center. The massive human ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal, debris scattering across space like broken toys. On the bridge of his warship, Commander Vexthera watched with satisfaction as the humans experienced their first taste of Zephrian power. "Excellent shot," he rumbled to his weapons officer. "Now they understand what they face." But something was wrong. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, the remaining human ships began to move in strange patterns. They scattered in all directions, not in panic, but in organized groups. Some ships moved toward the Zephrian fleet, while others pulled back to defensive positions around their planet. "Commander," reported his sensor officer, "the humans are transmitting on multiple frequencies. They appear to be sharing tactical data with each other." Vexera frowned. Most prey species either ran or froze when faced with superior predators. These humans were doing neither. They were communicating, organizing, learning. It was unusual behavior, but not threatening. What could primitive creatures like humans possibly learn that would help them against Zephrian technology? "Begin the invasion," Vexthera ordered. Send the advance forces to their largest population centers. We'll break their spirit quickly and harvest the survivors. 3 days later, Vixera stood in the command center of a temporary base on Earth's surface. The invasion had not gone according to plan. His advance forces had successfully captured several small towns, but the human response had been unexpected. Instead of cowering in fear, they had begun studying everything about the Zephrian attackers. Dr. Lisa Grant crouched behind the ruins of what had once been the town hall of Cedar Falls. Around her, 200 humans worked frantically to prepare defenses. They had been given 3 days' warning before the next Zephrian attack, and they intended to use every minute. The tall one with the scar on his left arm always attacks first, she whispered into her radio. He leads with his right claw and follows with his left. The pattern never changes. Dr. Grant was a biologist before the invasion began. Now she was something much more dangerous. A human who had spent 72 hours studying alien predators. She watched the Zephrian patrol through her binoculars and took careful notes. They moved like animals, following instincts that had served them well for millions of years.
Out.
They have excellent night vision, she continued her report, but they rely on it. Too much bright lights confuse them. They also hunt alone, even when moving in groups. Each one focuses on individual targets instead of working together. Captain Jake Morrison listened to Dr. Grant's reports from his position in the town's old fire station. He had been a small-town police chief before the aliens arrived. Now he commanded 200 civilians who had chosen to stay and fight instead of running to the evacuation centers. Lisa, how sure are you about their attack patterns? He asked over the radio. Completely sure. I've watched them take 3 towns now. They use the same tactics every time. They spread out to surround the area, then charge in from all sides, expecting the prey to panic and scatter. They've never adapted because they've never needed to. Jake looked around at his defenders. They were not soldiers. They were teachers, shop owners, mechanics, and farmers. None of them were as strong or as fast as a single Zephrian warrior. But they had something the aliens did not understand: the ability to work together and learn from their mistakes. Right, people? Jake announced to his team. Remember what we learned from the other attacks? It will come just before dawn, when they think we are sleeping. They will try to surround us, but we are not going to be where they expect us to be. Humans had spent 3 days turning Cedar Falls into something no Zephrian had ever encountered. A trap designed specifically for apex predators. They had studied every piece of footage from previous attacks, analyzed every pattern, and identified every weakness. When the Zephrians attacked at dawn, they found an empty town. Buildings appeared abandoned, the streets were silent, and there were no signs of human activity. To the alien warriors, it looked like the prey had simply run away. This had happened before on other worlds. Sometimes the local population fled rather than face superior predators. Sub-Commander Nectar led his hunting pack into the town center, his claws extended and ready for battle. Behind him came 20 of the Empire's finest warriors, each one capable of killing dozens of humans in single combat. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Spread out and search every building, Nectar commanded. There may be some humans hiding. Find them and bring them back alive if possible. The commander wants prisoners. The Zephrian warriors separated, each one taking a different street. They had used this tactic successfully on hundreds of worlds. By dividing their forces, they could cover more ground and prevent any prey from escaping. It was a proven strategy that had worked for 3,000 years. But the humans were not hiding in the buildings. They were underneath the town, in a network of basements, tunnels, and sewers that the Zephrians had never bothered to scan. Dr. Grant had realized that the aliens thought like surface predators. They expected their prey to be visible, to run in predictable directions, to follow the patterns that worked on every other world. Jake Morrison watched through a carefully hidden camera as the Zephrian warriors moved through his town. Each alien was alone now, separated from the others by several blocks. They had made themselves vulnerable without realizing it because they had never faced prey that could think strategically. Now, he whispered into his radio, the humans struck from everywhere at once. From manholes, from basement windows, from rooftops, and from buildings that had appeared empty. They did not attack with claws or fangs because they had neither. Instead, They attacked with weapons designed by creatures who had learned to kill things much larger and stronger than themselves. That Tar heard the explosion from 3 blocks away. Then another. Then another. His warriors were crying out in pain and confusion over the radio, reporting attacks from enemies they could not see. The humans were using their primitive explosive devices, but they were using them in ways no Zephrian had ever experienced. Fall back to the center. Tar roared into his communicator, regroup and face them in open combat. But when he reached the town center, only half of his warriors were still alive. The others had been killed by enemies who refused to fight fairly. The humans used fire, explosions, electricity, and poison gas. They attacked from hidden positions and disappeared before the Zephrians could strike back. Dr. Grant watched the surviving aliens gather in the town square through her scope. They were confused, frightened, and angry. For the first time in their species' history, Zephrian warriors had been outmatched by creatures they considered inferior prey. "They are trying to group together," she reported to Jake. "They want to face us in direct combat, where their physical advantages matter." Jake smiled grimly. "Too bad we are not going to give them what they want." The second phase of the attack began with a sound no Zephrian had ever heard, human laughter coming from speakers hidden throughout the town. It was not the laughter of prey animals cowering in fear. It was the laughter of predators who had successfully hunted their quarry into a trap. Dektar looked around desperately as more explosions rocked the town square. The humans were not just fighting back. They were hunting his warriors with cold, calculated precision. They had turned his own predatory instincts against him, using his expectations to lead him exactly where they wanted him to go. When the battle ended 2 hours later, Dektar was the only Zephrian warrior left alive. He stumbled through the burning wreckage of what had once been a simple human town, his armor cracked and his confidence shattered. Around him lay the bodies of 20 elite warriors, killed by creatures that were supposed to be helpless prey. Dr. Grant emerged from her hiding place and walked toward the wounded alien. In her hand, she carried a simple human weapon, a rifle that fired metal bullets. It was primitive technology compared to Zephrian energy weapons, but it had proven quite effective at killing supposedly superior predators. "You made a mistake," she said to Dekta, in his own language, which she had spent 3 days learning. "You assumed we were prey because we looked weak, but you never asked the most important question." The Care stared at her with his yellow eyes, too wounded and shocked to speak. "The question you should have asked," Dr. Grant continued, "is what kind of creatures survive on a planet where everything is trying to kill them? The answer is simple. We become very good at killing everything else." Commander Vexera stared at the reports from Cedar Falls with growing unease. 20 elite warriors dead. One survivor who kept babbling about humans who fought like demons and laughed while they killed. It had to be some kind of mistake. Prey. Animals did not hunt predators. It was against the natural order of the universe. "Subcommander Dektar is suffering from shock," reported the medical officer. "He claims the humans knew exactly what we would do before we did it. He says they turned the entire town into a weapon." Vexthera growled low in his throat. Vexthera had always been reliable, but the young warrior had clearly been traumatized by his first real defeat. No doubt the humans had gotten lucky. They had probably used some cowardly tactic that caught the hunting party off guard. It would not happen again. "Double the size of the next attack force," Vexthera ordered. "Send 100 warriors to their next target, whatever tricks the humans used will not work against superior numbers." But even as he gave the order, Vexera felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. The humans had killed 20 Zephrian warriors without losing a single defender. In 3,000 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. Colonel Pete Harrison stood in the command center of NORAD, watching data streams from around the globe. Every human military base, research facility, and communication network was connected in a vast web of shared information. When the aliens attacked Cedar Falls, every person on Earth learned something about how to fight them, at least as biological. "Analysis is being distributed to all units," reported his aide, Lieutenant Ben Rogers. "We now have detailed information about Zephrian anatomy, psychology, and tactical preferences. Pete nodded as he studied the global situation display. Red dots marked Zephrian positions while blue dots showed human forces. The aliens had more firepower and better technology, but they were fighting the entire human species as a single, coordinated organism. What about the New York preparations? Pete asked. 50 million people evacuated from the combat zone, Ben replied. 8 million volunteers stayed behind to help with the defense. Construction crews have been working around the clock for 6 days. Pete turned to look at the New York tactical display. The city had been transformed into something that would have been impossible for any other species to create. A trap designed by 8 million minds working together with perfect coordination. Dr. Lisa Grant was now the most important human on Earth. Her research into Zephrian behavior had become the foundation for all human military planning. She stood in a laboratory deep beneath Manhattan, surrounded by computer screens showing alien movement patterns. They are creatures of instinct, she explained to the assembled military commanders via video link. 3 million years of evolution as apex predators has made them incredibly dangerous, but also completely predictable. They see a city full of prey and they cannot resist the urge to hunt. General Sam Parker, the commander of New York's defense, studied the biological reports. On his screen, so you are saying they will definitely attack? They have to attack, Lisa replied. It is not a choice for them. When a Zephrian sees potential prey, his brain releases chemicals that make him aggressive and confident. They literally cannot think clearly when they are in hunting mode. You can use this against them. On his flagship in orbit, Vexthera assembled the largest invasion force in Zephrian history. 5,000 warriors, supported by battlecruisers and atmospheric fighters. He would not make the mistake of underestimating human trickery again. This time, he would use overwhelming force to crush their resistance completely. The target is their largest population center, he announced to his warriors. 8 million humans packed into a small area. We will land in the center of the city and spread out in all directions. Kill everything that moves. Take prisoners only if they surrender immediately. The Zephrian warriors roared their approval. They were eager to wash away the shame of Cedar Falls with human blood. This would be a proper hunt, the kind their species was born for. But as the invasion fleet approached New York, something strange happened. Instead of the usual panic and evacuation, the city remained active. Lights stayed on, traffic continued to move, and there were no signs of the fear that normally preceded a Zephrian attack. Commander reported his sensor officer, "We are detecting unusual activity throughout the city. Construction equipment, modified vehicles, and what appear to be weapon emplacements." Vexthera studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. The humans were not running. They were not hiding. They were preparing to fight a battle they could not possibly win. It made no sense from a predator's perspective. They are probably trying to evacuate their most important individuals, he decided. The construction activity is just them trying to build barriers. It will not help them. The first wave of Zephrian dropships entered Earth's atmosphere and headed straight for Manhattan. From space, the city looked like easy prey. Millions of humans packed into a small area with nowhere to run. It should have been a simple massacre. General Parker watched the alien ships approach from his command bunker 50 feet beneath the city. Around him, tactical displays showed the positions of 8 million human defenders spread throughout the urban landscape. Remember, he announced over the city-wide communication system, they think like animals. They will go for what looks like the easiest targets first. Let them come to us. The Zephrian warriors landed in Central Park and immediately began spreading out through the city. They moved in hunting packs, using the same tactics that had worked on every world they had ever conquered. But within minutes, they realized something was terribly wrong. The city was not full of panicking prey. It was full of humans who had been preparing for this moment for over a week. Every street had been modified, every building had been prepared, and every single human knew exactly what to do when the aliens arrived. Subcommander Kraltok led his pack of 50 warriors down Fifth Avenue, expecting to find cowering humans hiding in their primitive structures. Dead, he found empty streets that seemed to stretch on forever. The buildings rose like cliffs on both sides, their windows dark and silent. "Where are they?" demanded one of his warriors. The scans showed millions of humans in this area. Kraltak was about to respond when the first explosion came from behind. Then another from the side. Then more explosions from above as humans dropped improvised bombs from the rooftops. The city street became a killing ground, with Zephrian warriors caught in a carefully planned crossfire. "Take cover," Kraltak roared, but there was no cover. The humans had removed anything that could shelter the aliens while creating perfect hiding spots for themselves. Every doorway, every window, every rooftop held human defenders with weapons designed to kill creatures much larger than themselves. Dr. Grant watched the battle from her command center, tracking the movement of Zephrian forces throughout the city. The aliens were reacting exactly as she had predicted. When faced with resistance, they became more aggressive and less careful. When they took casualties, they tried to group together for mutual protection. "Phase 2, she announced to General Parker. "Drive them toward the kill zones." Throughout Manhattan, human defenders began a carefully coordinated withdrawal. They fired at the Zephrian warriors just enough to make them angry, then retreated. Down specific streets and into particular buildings? To the aliens, it looked like the humans were finally breaking under pressure. But the humans were not fleeing in panic. They were leading the Zephrians exactly where they wanted them to go. Every retreat was planned. Every withdrawal was designed to funnel the alien warriors into areas where they would be most vulnerable, Commander. Vexthera watched the battle from his ship with growing alarm. His warriors were reporting heavy casualties. But they were also claiming success. The humans appeared to be running, which meant the predatory instincts were working properly. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we are receiving strange transmissions from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be coordinating their movements on a global scale." Vexthera studied the communication patterns with confusion. The humans were sharing information faster than any species he had ever encountered. Every tactical lesson learned in New York was instantly transmitted to human forces around the world. It was as if the entire species was fighting as a single organism. "Impossible," he muttered. "No species can coordinate 8 billion individuals simultaneously." But as the battle continued, it became clear that the impossible was happening. The humans were not just sharing information about Zephrian tactics. They were learning, adapting, and improving their strategies in real time. Every mistake made by human defenders was immediately corrected by other human forces. Kraltak found himself trapped in Times Square with less than half of his original force. The humans had led them into a natural amphitheater surrounded by tall buildings. Every window, every rooftop, every elevated position was occupied by human defenders, with clear lines of sight to the street below. "We walked into a trap," he realized. With growing horror, they made us come here. The humans did not gloat or celebrate their success. They simply continued their methodical destruction of the Zephrian invasion force. General Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned warship Earth's Fury, watching the stars through the viewport. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New York, and humanity had learned more about warfare than the Zephrians had in 3,000 years. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had taught humans that they could be killed. General reported Captain Danny Walsh from the navigation station. "We are approaching the Zephrian outpost in the Kepler system. Long-range sensors showed 12 enemy vessels in defensive positions around their base." Amy nodded as she studied the tactical display. The human fleet consisted of 30 ships, all of them built with one purpose: hunting Zephrians. They were not the largest or most heavily armed vessels in the galaxy, but they were designed by creatures who understood how to kill apex predators. "Remember," she announced to the fleet, "these aliens have ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years because no one ever fought back effectively. They expect their enemies to run or hide. They do not expect to be hunted." Commander Alex Turner sat in the cockpit of his fighter craft, checking his weapons systems one final time. He had been a test pilot before the invasion began. He was humanity's best interceptor pilot, with 17 Zephrian kills to his credit. He had learned something important about alien psychology. They could not adapt to being prey. "All fighters ready for launch," he reported to the Earth's Fury. "We are prepared to begin the hunt." Amy smiled grimly at his choice of words. The humans had stopped thinking of this as a war. Wars were fought between equals. This was an extermination campaign against creatures that had proven they could not coexist peacefully with other species. On the Zephrian command ship, Base Commander Mordak received the first reports of human ships approaching his position. He studied the sensor readings with confusion. The human vessels were smaller than his own, but they were approaching an attack formation rather than retreating to safety. "How many ships?" he asked his sensor officer. 30 vessels, Commander. They appear to be the same type that attacked our supply convoy last month. Mordak growled low in his throat. The humans had been striking Zephrian positions throughout the outer systems for weeks. They hit fast, killed everything they could reach, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. It was not the behavior of prey animals. "Send a message to the fleet," he ordered. "Tell them we will crush these humans and restore the natural order. No species challenges Zephrian supremacy and survives." But even as he spoke, Mordak felt the same doubt that had been growing in every Zephrian commander since the New York disaster. The humans did not fight like any species the Empire had ever encountered. They fought like hunters who had already decided their prey was going to die. Dr. Lisa. Grant sat in the science bay of the Earth's Fury, watching real-time analysis of Zephrian ship movements. Understanding of alien psychology had become the foundation for all human military strategy. Every battle taught her something new about how predators thought when they became prey. "They are moving into their standard defensive formation," she reported to General Rodriguez. "Maximum firepower directed forward, with their strongest ships in the center. They still think this is going to be a traditional battle," Amy studied the tactical display as the two fleets approached each other. The Zephrian formation was perfect for fighting other apex predators who would attack head-on with superior force. It was completely wrong for fighting humans who had learned to kill creatures that were bigger and stronger than themselves. "Begin. Phase 1, she ordered. The human fleet split into 3 groups and began moving in different directions. To the Zephrians, it looked like the humans were confused or panicking. Prey animals often scattered when faced with organized predators. But the humans were not scattering randomly. They were moving to specific positions that would give them tactical advantages. Commander Mordak watched the human maneuver with satisfaction. They are breaking formation. Order all ships to pursue. You will destroy them while they are separated and vulnerable." The Zephrian fleet abandoned their defensive positions and began chasing the smaller human groups. It was exactly what the aliens' predatory instincts told them to do. Pursue fleeing prey and finish them off before they could escape. But the humans were not fleeing. They were leading the Zephrians into a trap that extended across 3 star systems. Alex Turner's fighter squadron was the bait. They flew just fast enough to stay ahead of the pursuing Zephrian ships, drawing them away from their base and into open space. Behind them came 8 alien warships, their weapons charging for what they thought would be an easy kill. "Come on," Alex whispered to himself as he watched his rear sensors. Just a little farther. The Zephrian ships followed the human fighters into what appeared to be empty space. Their commanders were focused on the hunt, their predatory instincts engaged in demanding that they catch and kill their prey. They did not notice the passive sensor contacts hidden in the asteroid field until it was too late. "Now," Alex announced. Over the communication channel, 20 human ships emerged from concealment among the asteroids. They had been waiting in complete silence, their systems powered down to avoid detection. The Zephrian vessels found themselves surrounded by enemies who had been hunting them from the moment they left their base. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, 8 Zephrian warships had been reduced to drifting wreckage. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed. Alex Turner added 3 more kills to his record, but he took no pleasure in the victory. This was not sport. This was pest control. Captain Jake Morrison led the assault team that boarded the Zephrian command ship. The former small-town police chief had become one of humanity's most effective ship-to-ship combat specialists. He understood something that the aliens did not. Humans had evolved to turn any environment into a hunting ground. The Zephrian ship's corridors were designed for 12-foot-tall warriors with natural armor and deadly claws. They should have been perfect for close combat against smaller, weaker humans. Dead, they became a maze of death traps as Jake's team moved through the vessel with methodical precision. Remember? Jake whispered to his soldiers as they advanced through the ship. They are bigger and stronger than us, but they think like animals. Use that against them. The human boarding party carried weapons designed specifically for killing Zephrians in enclosed spaces. Explosive charges, electric nets, and gas grenades that could incapacitate creatures much larger than themselves. They moved in coordinated teams, covering each other and communicating constantly. Commander Mordak found himself trapped in his own command center as human soldiers methodically cleared his ship. He could hear the sounds of battle getting closer, the screams of his warriors being killed by creatures that should have been easy prey. When the humans finally reached the bridge, Mordak expected to face savage beasts drunk on violence. Instead, he found calm, professional soldiers who treated killing Zephrians like any other job that needed to be done. Jake Morrison looked at the alien commander with no hatred, no anger, and no fear. "You made a mistake," he said in perfect Zephrian, which he had learned during the months since the invasion began. "You thought we were prey because we look weak, but you never studied what kind of creatures survive on a death world." Mordak stared at the human in confusion. "Death world. Earth," Jake explained patiently. "Our planet is covered with creatures that are bigger, faster, stronger, and more dangerous than us. We became the dominant species not by being the toughest, but by being the smartest. We learned to hunt everything that tried to hunt us." Dr. Grant's voice came over the ship's communication system as her psychological warfare protocol activated. "Attention, Zephrian survivors. You are now prisoners of the human race. Your empire sent you here to hunt us, but you have become our prey instead. This is your new reality." Throughout the Zephrian ship, the surviving aliens listened to the human female's words with growing horror. She spoke with the cold confidence of a predator who had already decided the fate of her prey. "Your species has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years," Dr. Grant continued, "because you never encountered true apex predators. You thought physical strength made you superior. But humans evolved to kill creatures that were stronger than us. We are very good at it." General Rodriguez coordinated the final phase of the operation from the Earth's fury. The Zephrian outpost had been completely destroyed, its defenders killed or captured. But more importantly, human forces had captured intact alien technology and navigation data. "Lisa," she called to Dr. Grant, "what does the data tell us about their home systems?" Dr. Grant studied the information that had been extracted from the Zephrian computers. Star charts, fleet positions, population centers, and military installations. The aliens had kept detailed records of their entire empire, never imagining that prey species might one day use that information against them. "They have 17 major military bases and 43 colony worlds," she reported. "All of them are defended by warriors who think exactly like the ones we just killed. They have never learned to adapt because they have never needed to." Amy nodded as she studied the star charts. 1 year after the first attack on Earth, Commander Vexera stood in chains before the Galactic Council. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species that had suffered under Zephrian rule for 3 millennia. But today, they were not looking at him with fear. They were looking at the humans with something that mixed respect, gratitude, and terror. Captain Jake Morrison sat at the human delegation table, no longer a small-town police chief, but now Earth's representative to the galactic community. Beside him sat Dr. Lisa Grant, whose research into alien psychology had become required reading at military academies across the galaxy. The humans looked unremarkable compared to the other species in the chamber, but everyone present knew that appearances meant nothing. "The charges against the Zephrian Empire are extensive," announced Chancellor Wektar, a tall, blue-skinned alien whose people had been enslaved for 800 years. "Genocide, slavery, destruction of civilian populations, and crimes against sentient life across 47 star systems." Vexera lifted his massive head to stare at the Chancellor. Even in chains, the Zephrian commander was an imposing figure. His yellow eyes held no remorse, only confusion and anger at how the natural order had been turned upside down. "We are apex predators," he said in a voice that still carried the arrogance of 3,000 years of dominance. "We took what we wanted because we were strong enough to take it. That is the way of the universe." Jake Morrison stood up slowly, his movement drawing the attention of every being in the chamber. He was not tall or physically impressive, but when he spoke, his words carried the weight of a species that had proven it could hunt anything in the galaxy. "That was the old way," Jake said quietly. "The galaxy has new apex predators now." The chamber fell silent as delegates from dozens of species considered the implications of his words. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through displays of strength or intimidation. They had simply made it clear that anyone who threatened Earth or its allies would be hunted down and eliminated with ruthless efficiency. Dr. Grant activated a holographic display that showed the current status of former Zephrian territory. Red zones marked areas where human forces were still conducting cleanup operations. Yellow zones showed systems where Zephrian war criminals were being tracked down. Green zones indicated space that was now under the protection of the newly formed Galactic Defense Alliance. "The Zephrian Empire no longer exists," she announced to the assembly. "Their military has been destroyed, their leadership captured or eliminated, and their territories have been liberated." This process took 11 months. Ambassador Trelac of the Centauri Federation raised one of his 6 arms. "How is this possible? The Zephrians ruled for 3,000 years. How did humans defeat them so quickly?" Dr. Grant smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. It was the smile of a predator who was being polite to creatures she did not consider threats. "The Zephrians made a fundamental error," she explained. "They assumed that physical superiority made them apex predators. Das. But true apex predators are not the biggest or strongest creatures. They are the most successful hunters, and humans evolved to hunt everything." On his home world of Zeph Prime, former General Korthmer watched the trial proceedings on a captured human communication device. Around him, the ruins of the once mighty Zephrian capital smoldered in the aftermath of the human siege. The greatest military fortress in galactic history had fallen in 3 days to an enemy that fought like no opponent they had ever faced. The humans had not attacked. Zeph Prime, with overwhelming force or superior technology, they had studied the planet's defenses for months, identified every weakness, and then systematically dismantled the Zephrian military machine piece by piece. They had turned the aliens' own strengths against them, using their predatory instincts to lead them into trap after trap. Captain Alex Turner's fighter squadron had been responsible for the final assault on the planetary defense grid. He sat in his cockpit now, watching Zephrian survivors being loaded onto transport ships for relocation to prison worlds. There was no satisfaction in the victory, only the grim knowledge that a job had been completed. "Alex," came General Rodriguez's voice over the communication channel. "The cleanup operation is finished. All Zephrian military assets have been secured or destroyed." Alex nodded as he looked down at the planet below. Once it had been the center of a galactic empire built on fear and violence. Now it was just another world under human protection, its former rulers reduced to prisoners. "And refugees, copy that, General. What are our orders for the remaining Zephrian population?" "Standard protocol: medical care, psychological counseling, and resettlement to worlds where they can live peacefully. Dr. Grant says most of them can be rehabilitated if they are removed from their predatory culture." Alex found this approach typical of human thinking. Even after everything the Zephrians had done, the humans were more interested in solving the problem permanently than in seeking revenge. They treated their former enemies like a species that needed to be managed rather than exterminated. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Jake Morrison continued his address to the assembled delegates. "The human government wants to make our position clear. We did not fight the Zephrians to become the new Galactic Empire. We fought them because they threatened Earth and refused to coexist peacefully with other species." Chancellor Wektar leaned forward in his chair. "Then what do humans want from the galaxy. Jake looked around the chamber at the hundreds of species represented there.
Oh.
Many of them were still recovering from generations of Zephrian oppression. Others were powerful civilizations that had survived by staying hidden or avoiding Zephrian attention. All of them were wondering what kind of rulers humans would be. "We want to go home," Jake said simply. "Earth is our world. We never asked to become involved in galactic politics. But we learned something important during this war. The galaxy needs protectors, not conquerors."
Actor.
Grant stood up beside Jake and activated another holographic display. This one showed the structure of the new Galactic Defense Alliance, a voluntary organization of species committed to mutual protection and peaceful cooperation. "The Alliance is not an empire," she explained. "No species is required to join, and any member can leave at any time. But those who do join will be protected from aggression by any force necessary." Ambassador Yathara of the Crystalline Collective raised a concern that many delegates were thinking. What guarantee do we have that humans will not become the next Zephrians? "You have proven you are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Jake Morrison smiled at the question. It was not the cold smile that Dr. Grant had shown earlier, but the warm expression of someone who understood the concerns of others. "You have our word," he said. "But more than that, you have our nature. Humans did not evolve to dominate other species. We evolved to protect our families and communities from threats. The galaxy is our community now." Commander Vexthera spoke from his position in the defendant's dock. "You claim to be protectors, but you hunted my people across the galaxy. You killed thousands of Zephrian warriors." Dr. Grant turned to face the former commander, her expression becoming serious. "We killed soldiers who refused to surrender and continued to commit atrocities against civilian populations. We captured and rehabilitated those who were willing to change. The choice was always yours." "And what of me?" Vexthera asked. "What is my fate?" The Chancellor consulted his notes before responding. "You have been found guilty of crimes against sentient life in 17 star systems. However, the human delegation has requested that you be given the opportunity to help rebuild what your empire destroyed." Vexthera stared at Jake Morrison in confusion. "You would trust me to help rebuild?" Jake nodded slowly. "Dr. Grant believes that Zephrians can learn to be something other than predators. She thinks your species can become productive members of galactic society if you are willing to try. And if I refuse, then you will spend the rest of your life in comfortable imprisonment on a world where you can do no harm," Jake replied. "The choice is yours." For the first time since his capture, Vexthera felt something other than anger or confusion. The humans were offering him something no Zephrian had ever experienced: redemption. It was not mercy exactly, but it was an opportunity to become something more than just a failed predator. 5 years later, Dr. Lisa Grant published her final report on the Zephrian War in the Galactic Scientific Journal. The document became the most widely read analysis of interspecies conflict in galactic history. The Zephrian Empire fell not because humans were stronger or more numerous, she wrote, but because they fundamentally misunderstood what makes a species truly dangerous. Physical strength, natural weapons, and predatory instincts are advantages. Only against prey that cannot fight back effectively. Humans became the dominant species on Earth, not by being the most physically powerful creatures on our planet, but by being the most adaptable hunters. We learned to kill everything that tried to kill us, and we did it by using our intelligence rather than our strength. The galaxy learned an important lesson from this conflict. True apex predators are not the creatures that can kill the most prey.